Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain and welcome to the film review. This review is brought to you by Shelley Ray, the Civilized War winner who handpicked this classic father-son road trip for me to take a closer look at. There's really not too much I have to say to introduce a character like Goofy. He and his fellow Musketeers are some of the most iconic cartoons ever made. So, how does Goofy's first solo outing hold up? Well, let's take a closer look as we dive into a Goofy movie. At first, it may seem a little strange that the only member of Disney's Big Three without a prominent girlfriend character is also the only one with a son. Goofy and Max's cartoon series Goof Troop, from which this movie was born, confirms that Goofy's wife, at some point in between old Goofy cartoons and Goof Troop itself, did die. Already kind of darker than what Disney usually presents in its cartoons. But this does allow for the movie to focus exclusively on a single parent-son relationship. The story is simple enough. Goofy receives a, quite frankly, terrifying call from the principal about Max's antics, so he's scared that Max could turn into a delinquent. His solution? Take Max on a cross-country vacation, just like Goofy and his dad did. But then you have the expected clashing of generations, and the first half of the movie basically writes itself. This eventually leads to an understanding between father and son before the film basically ends with a concert. Between Eye to Eye and Stand Out, it's honestly hard to say which is the better song in the movie. But now, let's dig deeper into the narrative and see what a Goofy movie is really trying to convey beneath its comedic exterior. It is a pretty fun time, as to be expected from a movie starring the literal interpretation of Zany, but that's part of why Goofy having a son makes more sense than someone like Donald or Mickey. Goofy just being who he is screams awkward, embarrassing dad, which sells the generation divide I mentioned before. Most of us know what it's like to have a father similar to Goofy, someone who has all manner of strange interests and hobbies and quirks that as kids, we just don't understand until we're a little older. Max is at that stage where needing his space and wanting to live his own life is his top priority, also something most of us can relate to. So, the narrative then becomes how these two opposing sides can coalesce in spite of their many differences. And the obvious answer is also the correct one. Because they love each other no matter what comes, the movie's resolution focuses on creating a more open dialogue as opposed to just imposing either side's will on the other. Because as Goofy himself says, he understands that Max wants his own life, he just wanted to be a part of it. And despite not having children myself, I imagine achieving that kind of bond is about as good as it gets for actual parents. What also helps this movie's story is the ways and means it progresses. There's a ton of really great scenes and visual aids here that sell the mood or add tension. One of the best scenes in the movie occurs right after Bigfoot attacks the pair. But before we talk about that moment, let's talk about the build-up to it. At the start of the movie, Max's only real concern is impressing Roxanne. Typical teenage boy stuff. Even though Goofy constantly references his own father throughout their trip, Max never seems to notice or care because of that generational divide. A divide made even greater by the opening scene in the movie where Max has a nightmare about becoming Goofy. That sets up his need to keep his father at a reasonable distance while he focuses on being cool, which he sees as the very opposite of Goofy. And literally speaking, he's not really far off. And that feeling only intensifies when their vacation starts with an animatronic band of all things, and soon it feels like all of Max's worst fears of becoming Goofy Jr. are being realized, but all the while, Goofy himself is trying to find the right way to connect to Max, which brings us Pete, the very embodiment of heavy-handed parenting, so much so that PJ has to literally refer to him as Sir, because while Goofy values love, Pete prioritizes respect, and just by looking at the two sons in question, it's easy to see how those distinct styles molded their kids in two different ways. And with that, let's discuss the aftermath of Bigfoot. At this point, the pair are trapped by the monster who can't seem to decide how intelligent it wants to be scene to scene, but anyways, they're trapped in their car, and with one dropping of the guard line from Max, he finally starts to undo some of that separation. Max finally starts to realize that Goofy's relationship with his dad meant a lot to him, which is why he references him so much and keeps so many of their memories of their adventures together. All Goofy wants is for his son to have a similarly special relationship with him. It's a great moment because all it took was a father setup and a single admission from Max. In a movie where mimes are literally murdered in front of you for laughs, there is some welcome subtlety here. The fences are finally beginning to mend, which presents the perfect time for Max to try and fix his lie to Roxanne, and then he's tested. I like how this scene uses both music and color to convey just how important this decision is. He's at the crossroads of destiny, which later becomes a literal crossroad, and just like Zuko after him, he chooses wrong. Not only does this give weight to everything Pete has been preaching, but it also pushes the most oblivious and wacky character past his breaking point. This is important because now both characters have some valid reasons to be displeased with the other, even though Max is probably more in the wrong here, which then leads to the critical revelation about Goofy just wanting to be a part of Max's life, and that's pretty much the end of the arcs of both characters. Both the concert and the Roxanne scene at the end tie up loose ends more than anything else, because the entire point of a Goofy movie is to reconcile a father-son relationship. All in all, a Goofy movie is a funny, entertaining, just long enough road trip movie that delivers fairly well on the surface and just beneath it. It can be a little absurd at times, but that's just the price of admission for a movie featuring these cartoon characters. There are a number of well done scenes, some great musical tracks, and there's something pretty timeless about the way this pair of goofs, in their own unique way, can represent many parent-child relationships and the struggles of keeping those bonds strong. The path towards reconnecting can be a literal and figurative bumpy road, but, as the song says, love is the reason why. For the first time ever, we're seeing it eye to eye. This is a film worth checking out, or checking out again, if you're in the mood for some light fun with a nice message, because growing up doesn't have to mean growing apart. Give it a watch and decide how goofy it is for yourself. And as always, thanks for watching.